Welcome, everyone. This is the premiere broadcast of Friending the Mirror, which will be addressing appearance-related issues. My name is Dawn Shaw. I'm a professional author and professional public speaker, and I'm really excited to have you join me here today. Today is my own story. I figured that would be a nice way to start off. And I brought in a guest interviewer. His name is Michael Bloom. He has a website called Caregiving Without Regret, and that is his business. We became acquainted through several online systems that I subscribe to because they have been very beneficial to me. But I'm going to turn the interview over to Michael, and he'll be asking me the questions, and I'll be providing the answers. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn. And it's so great to be here to help you launch your new webinar series. This is really exciting. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Dawn to showcase the inspiration, the knowledge that she has to offer folks, and with a growing worldwide audience. So as Dawn said, we had the pleasure of meeting. We're both authors, and I'm the author of the Accidental Caregiver Survival Guide, but I also do training for authors to help them expand their online reach through social media, through Facebook, and through the use of Hangouts technology like we're on right now. And for some of you who are watching, this may be the first ever time that you are participating in a live Hangout. So I just want to give a brief moment of housekeeping here. If for some reason the picture freezes up or the sound kind of goes hooey, it might be on your end. And 99.9% of the time, that's solved just by you refreshing your browser. Otherwise, if something happens on our end, we'll do as best we can to get back on as quickly as possible. You also have a chat box for those of you participating live, and we would love for you to type hello into the chat box and let us know where you're from. And while I'm interviewing, I'll be kind of managing the chat box at the same time. And Dawn is also going to be pleased to take some of your questions when we get towards the end. So without further ado, let's get rocking and rolling with this first show facing up to it. I'm so excited. So just to give a little bit more background about the wonderful Dawn Shaw, she understands adversity and the value of diversity. She was born with a rare tumor, the removal of which left her face half paralyzed, so she grew up looking, quote, different. Despite the insecurities and unfair treatment this sometimes brings, she learned to accept and even embrace her difference and lives a happy and productive life. Her inspiring memoir, Facing Up to It, published in early 2013, shares her stories and experiences during her challenging journey to confidence and self-acceptance. Her second book, a Kindle exclusive titled Friending the Mirror, Changing How You See Your Reflection, is a guide to finding beauty through happiness. When not writing or speaking to groups about such topics as diversity, accepting differences, and anti-bullying, Dawn runs her Icelandic horse breeding and training farm in Grapeview, Washington. She shares the farm with her husband of 19 years, 3 cats and 3 dogs. The number of horses is ever-changing. Lately, she spends more time scooping poop than she does riding, and we don't plan to scoop poop during this interview, but I think we're going to soar pretty far, so I'm really excited, and thank you so much, Dawn, for inviting me to be the interview host on this first show. So why don't we get rolling right away? And I was just wondering, because again, we're thinking about this, and I know you've got this memoir Facing Up to It, and just maybe to give people some background, how did your face come to look the way it does now?
Well, basically, as you mentioned in the introduction, I was born with a teratoma. Teratoma is a rare type of tumor that is made up of tissue from other parts of the body, which in my case, and it's usually organ tissue. In my case, it was brain tissue, of all things. So it actually caused a protrusion on the left side of my face that was about the size of my dad's fist. Now, my dad's a big guy. My dad, even at age 80, he's like over 6 feet tall. So you can imagine when he was young and in his prime, he would have had a pretty large fist. And so you can imagine what something that size hanging off the neck of a newborn baby must have looked like. Well, it was blocking my breathing. And so the first thing they had to do was a tracheostomy, which is what this is for. This is a tracheostomy scar. And that, by putting a tube in there, they were able to bypass the wind, the air. They were allow me to breathe. And then they could start concentrating on what was making up this tumor. And when they took the tumor out, they took it out the first time, and everything was just fine. It was a tumor. They determined it was a teratoma. Okay, they did the best they could to get it all. I had a big flap of skin hanging off the side of my face. But other than that, I seemed to be fine. Well, unfortunately, less than a year later, the tumor grew back. And because it had embedded itself into quite a few important parts of my face, it had wrapped itself around nerves, bone, and muscle, they had to take a lot of that material out in order to make sure that they got the entire tumor the second time. And because of that, I have nerve damage, structural damage, and that is essentially why my face is half paralyzed. Over the years since then, they've done a number of reconstructive surgeries, which have improved my appearance quite a bit. Now, I will say, at some point, I'm going to make it. I was having a little trouble with being able to use photographs, because I actually did have some photos that kind of showed the progression. But I'm having a minor little glitch with the technology, which I hope to sort out for future episodes. But so now you just have to look at my beautiful face the way it is at age 48. But I can assure you that it's improved quite a lot over the years. Okay, Michael.
Absolutely. So you say that your face has improved quite a lot over the years. Well, I personally think you're beautiful just the way you are, because we're each unique, beautiful beings, and I'm so glad that from a lifetime perspective that that you're here with us, and that a tumor didn't take you away. But I imagine as a child this must have been very difficult to deal with, and I was wondering, because I know you do lots of talks on anti-bullying, if you could describe, were you bullied as a kid and what was that like?
I have a gift. Well, human beings have a gift. It's called repression. People would ask me, well, were you bullied? And I would say, well, not really a lot. Mostly kids just left me alone. Now, exclusion is a form of bullying, and I was definitely excluded. Even though I was fairly athletic, I was not chosen. I was chosen last for teams. I just didn't have a lot of friends. And I did have situations in which my siblings actually pointed out, oh, don't you remember when this happened? And I literally had blocked out some of those memories. When they mentioned it, was like, oh yeah, kind of remember that. So I had people tease me. I'd have the situation where the guys would be walking down the hall at school, and one of them would, elbow his buddy, hey, there goes your girlfriend, and point at me. And with the obvious idea that I was not pretty, and therefore this person, for him to end up with somebody like me. But on the other hand, the way I kind of looked at it was, maybe he's not my type. And so, why? Maybe he's not good enough for me? No, I actually didn't come to that until quite a long time later. But I do remember thinking that maybe he's not my type, even at that age. So I think for me, I just didn't allow myself to get too hurt by it. The other thing about bullying, and one of the reasons why I might not remember as much about it, is because when something's over with, I have a tendency to just move on. It's just not important to me anymore when it's no longer hurting me. And so I just put it behind me and moved on. I hope that answers your
Oh, it
question,
did.
Michael.
It did. I put it behind you, moved on, which I'm sure would not be easy. And as a follow-up to that, I'm just wondering because we hear a lot of heart-wrenching stories on the news of young people, especially who take their own lives due to the feeling that people are not accepting of who they are. And I was wondering what your message might be to some of them that might be watching this broadcast or the replay of the broadcast in terms of if they're feeling low self-esteem or that they're not worthy or their appearance is not worthy. What would your message be to them as somebody who's gone through this?
I was very lucky in that I had a good support system. I had a family who was supportive of me, who built me up. I had close friends. I had teachers, people who encouraged the qualities, the positive qualities, the creativity, the writing talent, the outgoingness, all the aspects that basically is who I am that went beyond appearance. So for people out there who are hurting, who are feeling like they're not worthy, you are worthy. Everyone is worthy. It's not something that we have to earn. It's something that just is natural. And I can only hope that people in those situations will find support. It might not come from their immediate family, but hopefully it can come from someone at school, the people around you if you're out of school. Just the most important thing is find people who are good, fun to be with, who you enjoy being with, who accept you for who you are, and do things that you enjoy doing. Because the happier you are as a person, the more that's going to show out to other people. The less they're going to notice things like, oh, your face is different, because the beauty of your happiness, of your joy, I mean, a smile, and I don't care who that smile is on, what that person looks like. A smile is going to be one of the most beautiful things that people are going to see on anyone.
That's a great point. That's a great point. So I want to turn just slightly because I know one of the things you brought up in your story early on was somebody pointing out to a boy in your young age about who he would be dating. And I would say that boy was probably not good enough for you, Don. But let's get into asking, sort of what about romantic relationships? What has that journey been like for you?
Well, I didn't have any boyfriends in high school. And as far as that boy that was being picked on by his friend or being elbowed by his friend, I mean, in some respects, that was kind of an insult to him, too.
Yep.
To the idea that he would not be able to attract anyone who's, quote, prettier than me. Well, he would be lucky to have me. But, that's something that he probably didn't realize at the time. So really about the companion, it's not about the companion. It's about the one who's doing the elbowing. Romantic relationships, not so much, not for a long time. Not in high school, not in college. It didn't mean I didn't have an interest in people. Didn't mean I didn't have a lot of guys that were friends, that I had boys that I had crushes on, that I had people that I would have liked to have dated. But I just didn't have the interest. Now, how much of it had to do with my actual appearance and how much of it had to do with my personality, it's hard to say. Sometimes it's hard to make that separation. What is made and what is natural, what is innate. I did get involved in some relationships later, early, early 20s, late teens, early 20s, that were probably not, in society's terms, the healthiest relationships. But what they did for me in a positive way is it let me know that, yes, it was possible for men to be interested in me. And to be honest, even though they were older men and possibly otherwise attached, they we became interested in each other for the right reasons. We became friends first. I was not being taken advantage of. It grew because of a mutual interest, a mutual attraction. And that helped me to gain confidence so that when those relationships inevitably ended, which was good because I wanted somebody of my own. I wanted my own person, my own relationship. And I finally did find that person. And how I found him was by going out there and doing something that I love. I met my husband, my I've only had one. I met my husband, Ian, doing community theater because I was doing lighting, he was doing lighting. So we were both in technical theater. And when you're in technical theater, you end up spending long hours in a building that is oftentimes there's not very many other people in it. This is community theater. And so we got to spend some time together and we got to know each other. I mean, it might have helped that he was a nerd and he didn't really have, it's not like people were flocking all over him. All the women were just, flocking to him either. But he's a good guy and everybody agrees. I mean, he was a good catch. So, and we've been married almost 20 years. So that says something. I mean, when I found somebody, I found the right somebody. And I just want to say that there is someone out there. There's always someone out there. And if it wasn't Ian, it would have been somebody else. It's not like he was the only man in the world that would possibly be interested in me. And I think that's true of anyone. Because again, if you feel good about yourself, that's going to show. That's going to make you attractive in ways that are way beyond physical.
Absolutely. I know you talk about this in your memoir, and I was just wondering, what do you think got you to that place of coming to peace with your appearance and who you, Dawn, are?
Well, I can say that I quit having surgeries because one of them went terribly, terribly wrong. So for my young life, up until about my early 20s, I was having reconstructive surgeries. One of them put me in intensive care. I say it just about killed me, but I'm not 100% sure that I don't know how close I came to that. But I know that at that point I decided, at least from a physical standpoint, that the price of the surgeries was not worth what I was having to go through. And that's when, it doesn't mean, I mean, yes, I accepted that I was just going to have to live with my parents the way it was. It doesn't mean that I woke up one morning and said, oh, everything's fine, I'm beautiful, I'm happy with myself, men, come and get me. It wasn't like that at all. It took years after that. It's been a very gradual process. And in fact, one of the things that I credit more than anything else is my memoir, writing my memoir, facing up to it. Because I had to analyze my life. And it's tough. When you write a memoir, you're having to relive a lot of emotions, a lot of experiences, some good, some bad, some many that you wish you could change. But you just have to accept it. And it just taught me so much about myself. And about halfway through writing the book is when I realized that the next place to go from here would be speaking. That I wrote it because I wanted to share my story. I wanted it out there. I hoped that it could help people. It ended up helping me, maybe more than it's helped anybody who's read it. I don't know. But I do know that I found my path by writing this book. And it's been, even from then, it's been a gradual process because it took me 7 years to write the book. It's been a gradual process moving forward from that to being able to say, I mean, public speaking is not an issue for me. I can just get in front of a group of people and just not have a problem. I can make people laugh at a funeral. It's just an easy thing for me to do. So to get out there, and I'm also very open. And people tell me about the memoir. you're so open about everything. I'm like, well, yeah, you pretty much have to be, but that part is not difficult. Telling personal aspects of my life is not a problem for me. Knowing when to shut up sometimes is probably as much of a problem as anything else.
So that's great. I'm glad that you wrote the book as a gateway to public speaking. I found myself as being an author, and we published our books in the same year, 2013. That's been a gateway for me for public speaking as well. What types of groups do you like to speak with?
Well, I would say women's groups. Anyone who has insecurities about appearance, anyone who just doesn't feel like they're getting the most out of their life. Kids love speaking to, and actually almost any school age kids. The younger kids don't seem to have the biases yet, but on the other hand, it's introducing them to people who are different is a good way to help them to where they're not going to develop those biases. I think the more you expose the little kids to people who are different and let them know, hey, we're all different one way or the other, the more they are going to be accepting, and they're not going to treat people who are different like they're different because they're going to understand them. Because what happens is people are afraid of what they don't understand. And so if you help kids of all ages, from 5 years old to 95, understand that it's okay to be different. That we may not think exactly the same way. Not everybody's going to think the same way. Everyone has opinions about things. We certainly don't all look the same way. And I fully confess I've got my biases, and I'm working on those. Just because I see somebody else when I'm walking down the street who looks different, maybe they're in a wheelchair, maybe they're missing a leg, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to notice. That's one of the mindset changes I'm trying to make, is to just to not really react. I mean, to not make assumptions, and to not let somebody's difference affect how I think about them.
That's a really great point. That's a really great point. Something I've been thinking about too, and I know you've brought up people with differences, and even in your bio, which I shared in the beginning, what would you say would be the preferred nomenclature? Because I know people get into categories and labels and titles, and that's natural. I think what humans want to do is we want to kind of put people, even though we're all unique, into a box. And I was just wondering, what do you think is the preferred nomenclature for others that might have appearance issues, such as yourself?
Personally, I try to shy away from, and I also really discourage words like deformity or disfigured.
Yep.
There have been some very interesting discussions, even in the facial difference groups, about the acceptability and the use of those terms. And the people who use them, I will use those terms, but I'll use them more for effect. But the way I see them, I guess it depends on your own personal view. When I think of deformity or disfigurement, I think more negative. And I don't believe that it's healthy for us to describe ourselves using negative terms, or to describe people, human beings, in negative terms. I prefer the word difference, and I've actually had somebody say, well, I'm not going to be able to say my face is differenced. And my response to that is, then use what is making your face this way. Like, I would use facial paralysis. There's nothing that offends me by saying, oh, your face is half paralyzed. But I resent when people consider me to be disfigured or deformed, because I consider that negative. And I think it's easy for people to let negative words kind of sink in and affect their psyche. And I'm not saying, there are people may actually be listening right now who are just totally comfortable with how they look and they can use, because I know that sometimes by owning those words, you can change their meaning and they become less effective. If you are using it and it has no meaning to you in a negative way, then that's totally fine. I'm just saying it always makes me cringe when I read articles that are intended for the audiences that have differences. When I see those words being used and being bandied around, and in the medical profession, I mean, what's wrong with being kind and respectful? You can still be professional, but you can be kind and respectful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I see we're just a few minutes to the bottom of the hour, and I want to be respectful of the time that you set that you wanted to have about a 30-minute broadcast and then open up to Q&A. So I would encourage folks now, and we are very grateful that you've come to watch us live, to feel free to enter and share any comments or questions you may have for Dawn, and I'd be happy to share those in a few moments. So just feel free to type those into the chat box. In the meantime, John, because I know you are launching this great new venture with this webinar series, and I was hoping maybe you could take a moment just to talk about where you see things going for here, and what really is the goal for you having this program for the people who will be watching on a regular basis, and count me in.
Well, my goal for this is helping people. Helping people feel better about themselves I'm having a wide range of guests. I'm not limiting it to people with facial differences. In fact, because I have connection to the facial difference community, I'm actually trying to spread those people out, because I may know 4 or 5 people that have a facial difference that are happy to come on with me, but I also want to address other appearance-related issues. And I'm very happy to say that I actually have guests booked into July, inclusive, meaning from now until early July, I've got guests. I'm booked up. So if someone wants to be on my show, and I'm totally open to people contacting me and wanting to be on my show to tell me their story and to share. But unless I get a cancellation, then I'm looking at summer. But I've got somebody, my next guest, Wynn Charles, will be on next week. No, I'm sorry, not next week. She'll be on January 20th at 1 o'clock Pacific. I'm trying to keep the time consistent, but because I have to work around other people's schedules sometimes, there will be slight modifications of the day. I'm planning on doing 2 shows a month. That I hope it will not change. But Wynn is a snowboarder with cerebral palsy. And she's had this condition all her life, and she basically just lives her life as normally as possible, just adapting. So I'm having her on. I've got someone with spina bifida who is in a wheelchair. So people make assumptions about people when we see them in a wheelchair. So that's definitely an appearance-related issue. I've finally found somebody who can talk about trichotillomania, which is compulsive hair pulling. I've got a guy scheduled for May who had Bell's palsy, which thankfully is a temporary condition that causes paralysis in the face. But how must that have been for him to suddenly one day he can't move half his face? So I'm super excited to bring in, and of course my facial difference friends. I've got a few of those scheduled. Michael is actually scheduled to do a show with me. I've got people that are going to be talking about weight issues, and Michael's one of them. So they're definitely, I mean, people are picked on or feel picked on for a variety of reasons. And for that matter, you can have people who are beautiful. Just physically, the rest of society would look at them and say, wow, that person is really physically attractive, hubba hubba. And yet that person may not feel beautiful. I mean, and look at how our society, what we do with blondes, making blonde jokes. or assumptions we make about redheads. So there's all kinds of issues, appearance-related issues, that cause people to feel insecure or to feel bad.
This is great. So this new series is going to help us break down the barriers, tear down those people, people having those thoughts and feelings of being less than. So the idea is to bring folks on that will be inspiring, but also share golden nuggets of knowledge for how people could get more information about certain issues, certain medical conditions, certain ability variances. So I'm going to take a peek in a moment and see that we have a comment here. Thank you, Pat, for making a comment. Pat actually just shared the most important thing for me in talking with you is knowing that you are not in physical pain. And so which is great. And George West shared, so pleased to hear and see you both loud and clear. So we're glad to have had you join us today. This has been a great, I don't know about you, John, but hopefully this experience to launch has been just as great for you as it has been enjoyable for me. And I'm wondering too, as you respond to those comments, if and George, you're from England, so we got somebody from across the pond watching us. How fantastic is that? So I would love for you, John, to share how people can get more information about you and also become aware of when, the future episodes, so we get them coming back and grow this audience.
Okay, first of all, to address the comments. Actually, Pat, that is something that a lot of people do ask me, the kids, does it hurt? And because it doesn't, I don't even think about it. It doesn't even, it's like half the time I don't even notice that I'm different until somebody else points it out to me. But no, I'm not in pain. The only time I've been in pain is after my surgeries. And in fact, it's one of the reasons I decided not to have them anymore. George is my bud. I was impressed to see that you're watching from England. Thank you, George. I appreciate that. As for how to find me, I have a website, www.facinguptoit.com. It's the same as my memoir. So that's facinguptoit.com. There is a page on my schedule page. There's a brand new page that is going to have the webinar schedule. Right now it's a little behind, but I will be updating it this week because, like I say, I've got shows booked out. I do need information from my guests before I can put up the full-blown information and schedule. But it will be there. It is there. There will be links on how to register. The registration links also will get you the replay. So by all means, feel free to share those. I want this show to be watched. My hope for myself is I want to help people. And that's why I'm doing it. It actually costs me money to do this show. I don't expect anyone to compensate me for doing the show. I do it because I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from it. I'm hoping that it gets more awareness out there for my message. If there is a business goal, I'm hoping that it will get more exposure for me as a professional speaker so that I can get out there and speak more. It's something that I would like to get paid to do. So, I have been paid as a speaker, but to get more actual paid speaking gigs. The bottom line is I love to speak. I have no shortage of words, so that's not a problem for me.
Well, that's great. That's great, and I think this show is off to a great start. We appreciate the supportive comments that have come in, and that we have an international audience in the house today. And so I see George left another about his background, which Don, you can feel free to comment on. But unless you have some other need for me, and we've seen the last of the comments come in, this has been a great pleasure. I think this forum that you're going to have offering every 2 weeks, I'm so glad and excited to see you have speakers booked out through the summer Feel free, folks, to send more recommendations for speakers to Dawn because she can get booked out for the remainder of 2015. I think this is a great forum showcase for people to come and not just share their stories for the sake of sharing their stories, but to be educational and inspiring. Because I think more people need to come out of the shadows and share this information, which is going to be beneficial to so many out there. So, John, thank you so much for inviting me to be your interviewer on your show launch, and I will send it back to you for the close.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Michael has been a mentor to me in getting these whole webinars going. Him and his partner, John, run the program, and I just thought it sounded like a fabulous idea because, I mean, yes, I could have done this audio like on Blog Talk Radio, but I think it's so much more effective when you can actually see the person. You can see me, you can see my guest, and you recognize that, yeah, we're not just some voice out there, we're actually a face. And I just want to thank everybody who is watching live, and I want to thank everyone who is watching the replay, because the replay will be available. It'll be available indefinitely. Again, my next show is January 20th at 1 p.m. with Win Charles. Watch my webpage for the schedule. Facebook, I'm a Facebook addict, so look for me at Facing Up to It with Don Shaw on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I need to get better about it, but I do tweet. But probably Facebook and my webpage are the best places to find information on future shows, as well as my email lists. So in closing, I would just like to say, be kind to everyone around you. Be kinder when you need to be. But most importantly, be kind to yourself. Thank you very much, and until next time. We are loved.
The music started, but it went away.
Oh, I may have accidentally. I can't hear the music. So, all right. And normally there would be slides over it, but
It's going now.
We are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other. Bye, everybody.